So we'll go ahead and get started because we have a pretty full agenda today. I want to welcome everyone to the Leadership Academy Communities of Practice. Thank you for joining in. We usually start with a round of introductions and we go by state. And then we'll start with our presentation. We had Reverend Dr. Cassandra Sly Conway on just a few minutes ago and she got bumped off. So we'll try to give her a few minutes to get back on. We also have Dr. John Sasson. I hope I said that right. I just forgot how to pronounce it all of a sudden. Also with us. So we welcome you both to our Leadership Academy and look forward to your presentations. Also, John Walsh will be leading us in a discussion of a potential virtual Leadership Academy this fall. And so we'll be doing a short poll when we get—
Cassandra Sly Conway.
Dr. Cassandra, can you hear me this time?
Yes, I had to call back in.
Okay, great. Glad you're on. We're going to go do some introductions and see you all here, and then we'll get started with your presentation. I'm Robin Freeman with the University of Arkansas Currents, where I serve as director and the facilitator for the Leadership Academy Communities of Practice. First up, we usually go by state. We'll go in alphabetical order. Do we have anyone representing California? What about Illinois? Participants from California, Illinois. All right, next is Kentucky.
I'm Twyla Hammonds from London, Kentucky. I'm a vocational rehab counselor.
Hi, Twyla.
Hello, everybody.
Louisiana.
Madan Kundu.
Dr. Kundu, welcome.
Thank you.
Rosalind Davis, OHCC Community Coordinator.
Hi, Rosalind.
Megan Coleman Watkin, Crescent Care, New Orleans.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I might have missed myself. I'm Amory in California. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties over here, but
Hi,
hello.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And I'm Mary McManus from the Stout Vocational Rehabilitation Institute in Wisconsin.
Hello.
Hello.
Next up is Montana. Anyone from Montana on? What about New Hampshire? New Jersey.
Hi, this is Elaine Katz. I'm with Kessler Foundation in New Jersey. Glad to be with you.
Glad to have you. New Mexico is next. And we also have North Carolina. Oregon.
Yeah, this is Sarah Claja, Voc Rehab Counselor with the Commission for the Blind.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
And are we down to Virginia? Did I miss one?
Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma. I can't leave out Oklahoma.
No, no.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
I'm Kelly Beckham, Regional Director with the South Carolina Commission for the Blind.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
And Virginia. And then any other partners or anyone I missed earlier that want to introduce themselves?
I have Reverend Judy Cunningham as a part of my presentation.
Great.
Hello, Judy Cunningham, Pastor Shiloh AME Church, nurse and community activist.
Glad to have you both, and we welcome everyone here. We appreciate your participation today. Just a quick reminder, we are recording today's call, and we'll post it on our Leadership Academy website and send out a link to everyone after the meeting today. At this time, we're going to turn it over to Reverend Dr. Cassandra Sly Conway, who's going to share information from Project E3 and the work they've been doing in educating, empowerment, employment in South Carolina. Dr. Cassandra.
First of all, it's just a great pleasure doing this E3 grant with Timothy Tansey, and also interacting also with Judy Cunningham a lot with the grant. And working in Orangeburg has been a great experience for me in the surrounding areas for about 16 years so far. It's been a pleasure also working with VR in Orangeburg and surrounding agencies, South Carolina Commission for the Blind, and also South Carolina State University and other colleges and universities and area churches. The E3 grant, of course, all of us know, has a focus on education, empowerment, and employment. And today, I won't go through like all of the emphasis of the grant because most of us already know the emphasis of the grants, but I want to talk about what made it so successful in my eyes in the areas where we've been working. First of all, we've done a lot, I think, in concentrating with the diverse populations, meaning persons with disabilities and other groups, based on the needs of the Orangeburg and surrounding areas, if you look at slide number 2. And what we did in this particular grant, we had an initial meeting where we looked at it as a meeting of the mind, so to speak. We sent out an interest email where we brought in several people from the college or colleges. We invited area agencies and some of the same agencies that I've already stated, like VR, Orangeburg, and other agencies. So we invited a lot to come to the table. And we also, what I was telling Timothy Tansey was that we should also look at the churches in the area, because one of the areas on the grant, from what I saw that we had to do, or one of the objectives was to develop a resource guide. And so one of the areas I felt in the Orangeburg area that we needed to have an emphasis on is to actually have an operable resource guide. Several times, I know where I'm from, it's not the Orangeburg area, but I'm from a place called Newberry. Some of you might not have heard of a place called Newberry, but in that area where I'm from, I can't put my hand on one book, so to speak, that says, okay, these are the resources, or these are, some of the resources that you can kind of look at if you're working with, or if you need to find this or find that. And I'm saying if you're trying to work with diverse populations like persons with disabilities and you need some resources. Of course, we all over time know who to call and what we need, but I'm saying we need sometimes a focused resource guide. And so what we've been able to do is actually develop such a guide for the Orangeburg and surrounding areas. And also, I see that as one of our major accomplishments. If you look at slide number 3, then I said to myself, okay, but what is really successful about this particular area and what we're doing? And what I see is as being very successful in what we've done in Orangeburg and surrounding areas is that we've been able to look at the role of pastors in the VR process. And so there was a time where I said, we need to spread our wings and we need to find out what is the role of pastors in the VR process, or what happens in that process in these small rural communities? What is that specific role? And so I'm a pastor, so I see the specific need, but are we actually looking at this deeply? So what happened, we actually did what we said we would do. We actually looked at that. And so I actually looked at my role and some of the contacts and networks that I have. And I'll let Judy Cunningham talk a little bit about what she observed when we did that. So she'll talk just a little bit about her observations too, about the role of the pastor in the VR process.
Hello. My context with this issue was if you bring the churches in, I think some of the reason why people do not participate is because of the government aspect of it. And so when you bring the churches in, you take the government part out of it and it becomes more comfortable for people to talk to you. So then we can offer different workshops, bring those entities into a place of where people can come in and feel comfortable. And so with that being said, we have been able to reach more people. And as we reach those people, then we take that part of it that they're afraid of. You know, when you look at Voc Rehab or any of the entities, they look at, well, the first thing, maybe losing their funds, or, you know, if they try to get help, things might change the way they're living, and they're basing their living on their income. So, you know, I think that was the biggest challenge we had, bringing the churches in, brought a place of peace and a place of where people knew the people they were dealing with. And so when you bring the governmental offices into that situation, then they feel more at ease. And I think that was the key point.
So what happened was we had different trainings, and we had trainings that we placed at, where we had trainings at South Carolina State University. And then we had trainings also at VR. And also we had some trainings in other areas. And what we found was that when we actually went to the meetings, if you look at slide number, I think it's number 5, I'm focusing now on the success stories. When we actually went out, we actually went into some of the meetings that were held at major events. For instance, when we found out that there were certain church events that were being held that were like widespread. For instance, certain churches have major events that are already on schedule. For instance, the AME has certain church events that are already on schedule where they have about 1,000 pastors or counselors who are already set to come to these 4 or 5 events every year. So we were allowed to, by the bishop in the AME church, to come in and actually talk about the E3 grant and what we were doing. And also we were able to also come in and talk about VR and the services of VR. And from that particular meeting, we were even able to bring in some of the people from VR to another meeting to even tell some of the counselors and the pastors about VR even more on a deeper level. So what we're saying is that the access now was even greater because now you're tapping into your networks. So your pastors now, some of them at these major meetings said, we didn't know about VR, and we didn't know that VR did all these other things. Not that they didn't know about VR, but they didn't know all the tasks of VR, or they didn't know that VR did so many different things. Or we didn't know that VR was able to help people in the community on that level. So not that they weren't exposed to vocational rehab, but they didn't know all the other aspects that VR could provide to diverse populations. So with that being said, we're able now to even expose everyone to more services that VR allows. And then now you have the pastor saying, oh, I can tell them more about VR services, and I could possibly send some people over now who actually said that they need services. So then from that, now you have some pastors now calling and saying, oh, I want to be on your advisory board for E3. So we had other trainings, we had other meetings, and not only do we have now these agencies a part of E3, now you have more pastors who are part of E3. Now you have presiding elders who are part of different churches. Now you have bishops who are now wanting to do their parts to spread the word about VR and the services that E3 is about. Now you have more people wanting to know about what South Carolina Commission of the Blind does, and so on and so forth. And so that's what I'm seeing from this particular grant as a major success story, that we were able to get more interaction and more support from these other entities that we may not have had we not gone out to do more outreach and more trainings and different things. And now so we have people calling and saying, can you do a training about this, a training about that? We need more of this. We need to see more of this in our communities. Thank you for doing this. Or can you get Timothy Tansey to come down and do this? Can you do this, Cassandra? So that's what I'm seeing as being a major success story. And then statistically, if you look at it, the grant, the part 2 of the grant, which is now what we're doing now, the summer and the fall, we're now working on the summer part and now the fall. Now we're doing a mini conference in the fall. The mini conference is entitled Embracing Diverse Communities. And it's a collaboration among all the agencies that we've already stated. It's also where some of the pastors will also come in and do presentations. VR will also come in and do presentations. And so with that, to me, that's everybody that has been involved over the course of a year and a half with the, the advisory committee meetings, with the trainings, with all of the different trainings that we've had over the last year and a half. So to me, everything is coming together cohesively, where everybody's coming together at one point virtually. And so that to me also is another success story or pattern with this particular grant. Updates and recommendations, number 7. I would just like to see more done where we can look at pastoral involvement. If you see the second point, focus on communities and pastoral involvement in the VR process, involvement more with area churches, involvement more with community events. And so that's what I see as major recommendations from what I see from this particular, focus of what we did with the E3 grant and what we were able to do. And I would just like your suggestions and comments as well.
That's great information. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Cassandra Sly-Conway. Do we have any questions or comments from any participants from what you've heard today? Dr. Kundu?
I think this is a very important information that we need to disseminate, that your churches has great role to play in the community, particularly in rural areas. So that shows that they are very successful in Orangeburg and vicinity, because the bishops and have a lot of influence. They can talk about it. And this is true that VR is a secret message. People don't know about VR unless something happens to you or your family member. Then you talk about vocational rehabilitation. Before that, you don't talk about it. Suppose, for example, we don't tell our kids, do you want to be a rehab counselor? No. we say we engineer, doctors, lawyers, something, computer programmer. They never talk about rehab counseling or any helping profession. No. So this rehabilitation is a very secret thing, you know, people don't know about it. So I think this is a good approach that we go to the churches and talk to them because they have the power to influence people and disseminate information. This is an excellent strategy. And we should utilize that. We should emphasize this approach.
Right,
Robin?
and Jude, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, this is Elaine Katz. I was just going to add to that I think we've done, and I put in the chat box a link, we did a Putting Faith to Work project a number of years ago with Vanderbilt University, which didn't have the VR aspect, which I think is really interesting and unique part of this, but it does have the church aspect. That we found that churches were a great source of developing jobs and finding jobs in and of itself for members, and also to do some disability awareness, because the churches didn't realize they had members with especially non-evident disabilities, and a lot of them became accessible and added ramps and did some other things. So if you want information, just go to the chat box.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll also take that and put it on our website as well. Mary, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, there's such a powerful aspect to involving the faith community in all of our work. When in our first year working in North Carolina, we were in Rocky Mount, and I remember one of the first discussions we had with probably 30 people around a very crowded conference table in Rocky Mount was how important the faith communities are, especially when the VR counselors are struggling in reaching people who they have on their list, and who are their go-to people in the faith communities, who are the pastors, and who are the directors of religious outreach and so on, and people who help with the food pantry and all of that. And I think more of a self-organizing system, if you will, than what you're talking about in this presentation. But I think the power base is still in the bridging of communication between those organizations that have the greatest influence. And in many of our communities, those are our faith communities that have the greatest influence. So I was delighted to see this program today and to listen and take a look at the slides, and hope we can continue to advance these opportunities across the project while we're still up and running, and take a look at how the knowledge translation group can use some of this information to help. Excuse me. I'll cut it off now.
Yeah,
it's lawn mowing day in our neighborhood.
Hi, this is Judy Cunningham again. I might be able to help express that a little better because I didn't mention all the work that we did. It is self-starting. I was invited to the table, and so when they invited me to the table, I began to hear all of the different things that were available. And as a pastor of the AME Church, my connection was I have a background as being a conference health minister. So I began to know the intricate workings of the church. So I took it to the bishop, and from the bishop, got his permission to take it to the other churches, and we took it to the other churches. So you have to have somebody on the inside that knows the intricate workings of their church or their denomination of their church, so that when you get them involved, then they can get the people who you necessarily need at the table. Because all of the churches do something. They have either a pantry or the different things that they do within their churches. So when you get that conglomerate together, it is a big outreach to the community. And so it's more that the E3 grant was kind of more than that when they brought us to the table, because at that point, people began to see how they could help their church members, how the community could be helped as well. So when you put the two together, it just automatically worked.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this really ties in well with our Leadership Academy and some of the work that you all have been doing in the communities with the asset-based community development training and being able to maximize the resources in your local communities. getting more people involved, being aware, and building that coalition in the community who can be the champions for continuing this work that we've started in the Project E3. So again, Reverend Dr. Cassandra Sly-Conway, thank you for sharing today. It's been really good information.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Also, is it Reverend Cunningham?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on our call today. We appreciate the information. It's really, really good to have, and we'll share your slide with our community practice website and also the resource that Elaine has shared as well.
Thank you.
And Robin, if I
Thank you so
may,
much.
I'd also be very interested to hear when you hold your Embracing Diverse Communities mini conference in the fall. I would love for you folks to do a follow-up with us regarding that. So it was a fantastic presentation, and as many folks have said, very relevant information, especially for a project that really seeks to lower barriers for folks to participate in VR programs and to seek employment. So thank you so much for this presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would love to share that with you, and I'll share the flyer and everything with Robin. And it's on schedule to be a virtual conference on September the 18th.
Okay,
so
good.
we'll send the information to Robin to share with everyone.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you. Every time someone else says something, I remember what you said early in your presentation about how you're by using the churches, you're breaking down the barriers, and you know that people have a fear or a mistrust of government. And I thought that was so relevant, especially as we turn to Dr. John Sasson with Langston University to share with us approaches of why current issues that are going on with people of color, why that matters to VR and how to make it relevant in our work. And I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, hello everybody.
Hello.
Robin, I wish we could have had the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago. It was so natural, so organic. So I'm going to kind of start with that spirit of organic synergy. A couple weeks ago, I mean, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you haven't been watching television lately, you've been missing a lot coming from my hometown. I'm going to try to be optimistic and positive and start off with a really good story. One of the things that I tell my students for the last 15 years is that rehabilitation counseling is the vanguard of social justice, and that we practice it every single day. And we've been doing a lot of research on that. And about 2 weeks ago, right in the middle of the pandemic, right in the middle of the protests, right in the middle of the peaceful marches, I got a call from a young man that was one of my students a few years ago and asked me to come up to a small town, a sunset town. For those of you who know what that means, is a pretty racially charged environment. And he wanted me to come up and speak on racism. And I agreed. Action research is kind of my deal. And so I agreed to go up there. And he and I met beforehand, and we didn't know what to expect. There was a level of fear, a level of anxiety, and just this whole atmosphere that we're facing as human beings together. It was permeating all over the region. But when I got there, he and I we were pleasantly surprised. The town mayor showed up, the city council, the town manager, and about 30 to 35 citizens. Now, the little town is 95% white, okay? And to have this event there, you know, confronting racism in a small town, we didn't know what to expect. But you know what, going in with an open heart and an open mind, we learned pretty quickly that, you know what, there was a really beautiful experience. What I mean by that is we had an honest, open, tough discussion. But as my former student and one of the few Black coaches in town was relating, is somebody asked him a question. How do you handle racism on a day-to-day basis? And he said that he developed a thick skin. And we had to stop right there. I said, this bothers me. We're asking another human being to develop a thick skin because of racism and our own perspective and our own biases and our own prejudice. We don't ask other human beings to develop a thick skin when it comes to having to absorb and I use the word shield, having to shield yourself from inhumanity. And this is kind of what Robin and I were talking about a few weeks back, about developing an open and honest dialogue. And I think when we're talking about how does that overlay with our field, I really am a firm believer that our field really truly has the ability to break down the barriers that we face with racism. The Reverend Doctor hit it on the head. It's about trust. Our communities don't trust entities or institutions because we've had institutional racism since the beginning of our existence, and it hasn't gone away. It's just become more subtle in nature until events like the last few months bubble back up. So the folks that we're trying to reach don't trust us. And when they go to our offices, they see the very institutions that have excluded them for generations. And I started really diving into this thick skin generational thing because I'm working on a project right now involving the 1921 race massacre in Tulsa. And as part of this group that is researching it and also actively working with the community to commemorate it next year, my biggest fear is that these events and these dates, they go on, and what happens afterwards. And so one of the things that we're studying is the generational effects of racism in relationship to the 1921 race massacre and how it affects people today. And to really kind of basically sum it up in a nutshell is generational racism permeates the relationships that our potential community members, clients, consumers, whatever you want to say, has with systems. And until we really have this conversation with all of us openly, it becomes very difficult no, it's not too difficult to understand why there's this general mistrust in going to VR systems, social service systems, etc. Because these institutional or generational feelings permeate in relationships. And the only way you can break them down is to have honest relationships. And so I really believe that when Robin and I were talking a couple of weeks back, that it's important to get past and we talked about just past the multicultural classes that we teach and really dive into the aspect of it from a psychological and even a deeper, to have deeper understanding, to have the dialogue, to have these communications, go out to the community as rehab professionals and be the leaders and be the facilitators to having these discussions. And I love the idea of working with churches. I've been working with all the North Tulsa churches, which is predominantly where the race massacre took place, to make sure that we're including all voices to the table. Because like the good doctor said, that's where we gain entry, is with trustful groups. And if not everybody's at the table and not everybody's willing to have these discussions, we veer off track sometimes. I got more, but I was waiting for some response. I mean,
I agree with you on the churches being involved, and we have to look at that a little bit deeper. Even so, this is Cassandra.
Right. I think, Cassandra, it's really important that we bring all the faith groups together, because you're right, that is the bridge to the professions. And a lot of times we show up, but we don't really embrace, you know. So I think one of the things that we can look at as VR counselors have, and it's just not just VR counseling in general, is showing up and getting actively involved in community activities. Our students at Langston, I make sure that their projects always center in on community action. And in other words, they get out in the community, they roll up their sleeves, they understand that that there's an intersection between poverty and disability, there's an intersection between racism and disability, and how these moving parts all come together and can be benefited by rehabilitation. If you look at our basic models, you can see how we could apply them to community healing, to community trust building, to social services. And so that's one of the things that we really work on, is to develop the concept of, we all want equality, but we can't have equality until we have equity in our resources and our delivery. And it's not a homogeneous community. There is no such thing, because rural Oklahoma is different than rural Arkansas. When I'm working in the Delta of Arkansas, I do rely heavily on the faith-based entry points. I hire job coaches that have a pastoral background, specifically to help mitigate some of the fears and the mistrust that people would have for our profession. Because like the other reverend pointed out, we do represent resources, right? We do represent the ability to go off to school, to get job readiness training, which I also believe that we've kind of moved away from as a profession lately, when we need to kind of get back to the job readiness, because then you could address how to develop a better communication with potential employers. And, you know, we learned from our job readiness how to talk about our disability when it comes to our interviews, but we also have to really learn to understand it's not just about getting a job, it's about keeping a job, and it's about getting through coffee breaks and how to navigate and how to communicate, right? So I think that all these variables are important when we're talking about racism, disability, and our roles and our responsibilities as rehabilitation professionals. I mean, I'm looking around the room, and we've got some of the most esteemed social justice warriors as far as the professors that I've come across in my readings and my research. And we've got the tools. Now, how do we continue to impact our future generations of rehab counselors so that they can feel empowered that they are the change agents? I think that's something that we really have to continue to address. And so it's getting them to be comfortable talking about racism, white privilege, and not being defensive, you know, because right when you start having these conversations, and we've had presentations at conferences, and when we, you know, if you want to do a showstopper, bring up the concept of white privilege in a group of rehab counselors that are predominantly white. That will stop any show and lead off into a variety of different conversations. But realistically, if we keep dodging the elephant in the room and we don't talk about these things, we just wait till the next time, and it looks good on a sideshow, you know. So I really think that in our trainings, in our interactions, and I love what the first presenter said, you got to get out in the community and educate the community about what we do and why we do it. And the bottom line, the great equalizer is that concept of compassion and humanity. I know I'm rambling on about a lot of different topics, but this is where Robin and I went off on tangents the last time, and it was such a beautiful community. It was such a beautiful exchange, but a needed exchange.
Very much so. And I guess my question would be to kind of bring it back to VR, and those who are, you know, VR counselors are doing a lot nowadays, especially in this time of the pandemic. And so now we're saying, or maybe we've always been saying, we need you to get out in the community. and they're in institutions where they have very specific jobs and outcomes and performances that they have to meet. So where do they start?
I think they start by listening and being energized and supported by the professors that train them, having that communication. But also, it's really important that they know their role is more than just case management and job placement. I think if you look at it, we've boxed our profession in, and we really got to liberate our profession to be able to be part of the community again, and to be able to be comfortable going out and talking to the chamber, not only about the opportunities that folks with disabilities need in their communities, but also the opportunities to grow their communities. Like going back to that organic discussion that we had in Oologah, Oklahoma, excuse me. And going into the community and having these conversations, facilitating them. Here's what happens. Magically, it opens up even more discussions, which opens up opportunities for employment, for engagement, for having communities understand that they can be part of the solution versus the problem. The commitment walking away from that small town to dealing with racism, and then how to create opportunities for new people to move into their town to save it, before it becomes a dust bowl. That type of honest dialogue helps rehab counselors go back to what we trained them to do in the first place, is be the agents of change within their communities. I think a lot of the frustration that I hear from my old students is, hey, I got into this field thinking I was going to make a difference, but all I'm doing is X, Y, and Z. I hate to see such beautiful talent feel that they're 3 years or 4 years into a profession and they're burnt out, or they feel that that's all they're going to be doing, when they could be energized if we could get to the decision makers to let them be free to have that balance. It's all about balance, isn't it?
Can I interject right here? This is Reverend Judy Cunningham.
Go ahead.
One of the things I'm hearing, you talked about you were going to the churches in Charleston, in that area, and you were actually doing this type of recourse with everyone. But first steps to breaking down any generational racism is with the grassroots community. So if you're doing that already on a church basis in Charleston, which we are AME, and that's where the 9 got killed, that would be an asset to going to developing some type of workshop where you could go to every church that would be able to, that would request your assistance, and you would have these small, I think what I'm trying to say is they're non-confrontational. If Black Lives Matter or some of these other people came and tried to have workshops, it would create havoc. But someone like VR coming in rehab professionals, and you having a workshop that's geared toward that, bringing in, at that point, small community meetings where you can have open discussions, it starts at the grassroots level. If you can do that, and I've been praying for stuff like this, you can do that, I believe it will grow into the greater level where as people begin to hear about you, what you're doing, it becomes a forum. And I'm just happy to be on this call to hear you say these are the things that you're doing, because most people don't even know about Black Wall Street or the things that have happened that caused Black people or people of color not to come to the table. And I believe it has to start with that.
That's right. Yeah. And then just like we have major conferences coming up, that we can even share that information with Robin to send out, just so you'll know, because just like there was a major conference last Friday called Justice.con, that was held via New York, but that was faith-based. There was several partnerships on that virtual conference that I think VR would want to be associated with.
I agree 100%. One of the things that I hate to use the word one of the things that we did was I got on the board.
This is Cassandra, by the way. I'm sorry. I have to note who I am because I'm not on the Zoom. I'm sorry.
One of the things that we did is I got on the board of directors of Black Wall Street. And because one of the things that I feel real strongly about VR is that we have a partnership with entrepreneurialism. And so that by basically working with the business leaders and faith leaders on a historic chamber, we were able to access opportunities or ongoing training and opportunities that we could network. Because a lot of times, again, it goes back to what I said before. If we work in isolation, if we're not developing a broader tent and getting the power brokers, whether it's the faith-based community or the chambers of commerce, into the discussion about these issues, whether it's disability rights or racist or sexism or any of the isms, we operate in these isolated silos. But if we continue to work with the grassroots, and I agree, you have to start with the grassroots. It has to be organic, and every community has specific and unique needs that you can't say one size fits all. So it's having our VR people to be comfortable understanding the dynamics of their own communities, and then having somebody help facilitate their entry into that, whether it's in the chamber or the churches or other important groups. So I think that's sometimes missing in our training. In our foundational classes or even our multicultural classes, these are things that would really excite our students and really excite our professionals to stay engaged.
I'm gonna cut the conversation off right there because I know we could go a lot further, but Dr. Assassin, thank you. It's great information, very motivational to us to remember us. I really like what you led off with, that VR is the vanguard of social justice. So appreciate that reminder. I'm going to turn it over now to John Walsh. We're going to talk about, get your input, do some polling on a virtual leadership academy, potentially for the fall. We just so John and Kevin Red will kind of take it from here.
All right, great, thank you. So yeah, we're going to take a little slightly different approach today to our sustainability piece of the call. We, as Robin had mentioned, are exploring the potential of developing a version 2 of the Leadership Academy. Of course, it would be an online version in light of the current reality we're in. We have also been in discussions with our project officer at the U.S. Department of Education in regards to this. So today, we really want to start getting some feedback from you on what are some of the topical areas, what are the format for how we're going to have that training, etc. We've actually created a survey, and we're going to be sending that link out to you folks tomorrow. And we're hoping that everyone, please complete that survey and give us your feedback. Some of it is going to be multiple choice or forced selection, but we're also going to have some open-ended questions for you so we can really start gathering some data about if we can move forward with this Leadership Academy, how do we want to do it that's going to be relevant to your needs. Okay, so Kevin, without further ado, perhaps we can go through this part of the survey through the polling feature of Zoom, and we could start to collect some of your feedback. All right, so the first question, and Kevin, do you want to take over from here?
No, I was just hoping everybody sees the first question. It's asking about, it should be the first question if you want to, if there's other topics you want to see, and you can select more than one of those. And as you scroll through the poll, it looks like it's going to do all the questions kind of at once. So you can answer the first one and move through to the other questions.
So Kevin, I'm trying to hit submit and it's not moving to the next question, or is it, are you going to move it to the next question?
You should just,
These all questions are
You
all.
should, this is Elaine, you just scroll down and then it gets all the questions.
Ah, very good.
yeah,
Thank
I was going
you.
to say, just scroll on down. One, okay, two of y'all, three of y'all have done it.
Hello?
Oh, sorry, Reverend Cunningham, Dr. Sy. We're doing a poll right now. That's why it's quiet. And I guess if you're joining by phone, then, well, you're not seeing the poll that they're answering questions about about having another academy, another
Okay,
meeting.
I guess.
So, sorry, we kind of left you out of it. Being on the phone, you're not seeing what everybody's answering all these questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see it either, but Dr. Conway, I'll share your contact information with everyone if that's okay, or if you want me to share.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
People want to follow up.
Yes, ma'am. That's fine.
And just as a follow-up with the survey link that will be going out as well, we're going to make sure that link goes out to everyone that participated in our first Leadership Academy. And and again, those open-ended questions, we'd love to get your additional comments, because if we miss something, we try to put together a pretty comprehensive selection of items. But certainly,
and I'll make sure Judy gets it too.
Thank you. I was just going to say.
And we can email those back, right? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Well, you all have a great day.
Thank you,
you
Dr.
too.
Reverend Dr. Cassandra. We appreciate y'all participating today.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So does anyone need any additional time, or has everyone completed their poll?
I'm showing 15 of 16, so there would only be one other. And I guess, Robin, being the host, you wouldn't be able to respond. So,
all right.
93%, I would say that's good.
That's pretty good. So
then
what we'll do is
I'll go ahead and end the polling.
Okay.
Let you take it.
We're going to go ahead and use your answers from today to give us kind of some baseline data, but expect to receive in your email tomorrow the more comprehensive survey. And again, we're looking for everyone to complete that survey by July 10th. So thank you so much for providing your feedback. Robin, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Dr. Kundu, did you have a question?
Yeah, I want to ask a question to John regarding your research in Tulsa. Could you tell us more about this research?
Sure. I partnered up with two other universities, not Rogers State, excuse me, North NSU and ORU here in Tulsa. They were the generation. They were observing. They wanted to. Let me start from the beginning. We partnered up with 3 different universities. I'm on the coding team, which is what I provided the access to the interviews. So we're doing a qualitative study. We're interviewing community members that first group had a direct link to the 1921 massacre. Second group was a group of folks that have moved here since, and what their response of when they learned about it, how they learned about it, what's their feelings. So what we've done is we're doing interviews in the community of the descendants as well as community members, and having an extended interview process. And we're at the point now we're still collecting data. We're just finished the interviews, and we're in the process of doing the transcription and coding, which is what I'm doing. And there's themes that are starting to evolve, and we just want to get to that saturation point now. But it's really interesting how whitewashed or how the community has responded to the just being interviewed. It's a great way of psychologically releasing some of the stress, some of the fear that they've had. And so the study is really organically focused on the community and how we could qualify their responses. And then the next phase is doing some healing. We're going to utilize some Native American healing practices and see if that can help, because I have a friend of mine who's done the lead on this is Dr. Stephen Byers, and he's done a lot of natural healing and indigenous healing in his community, which is Native American. And we want to see if we can look at, giving these folks that have come out and have had to experience or express their trauma an opportunity to participate in that next stage.
Great. I think this will be an excellent study. It will be very helpful.
Yeah.
Because healing by the Native American, it works. They believe in it. I have participated in some of them, Sweat Lodge and others.
Yes,
we work
exactly.
on the capacity building. So it was
we want to make it, and it's got to be tailored to the community of North Tulsa and their descendants. And, one size, like I said before, one size doesn't fit all, but at least just the ability. One of the major themes is just the recognition
yes,
of their humanity and what their community lost is a part of the healing process to begin with. And the other theme that has come out so far is the acknowledgement that it even happened. You'd be surprised if a lot of our participants said that they never knew about it because it wasn't talked in their family, because if you talk it, you walk it, right? So just that suppression of generational trauma has had a negative effect on how they view institutions, how they trust each other, how the city of Tulsa is still a segregated city. And all is generational. And that, it opened up we pulled the scab off of a huge wound.
True. Good. Excellent. That's a good idea, because it's all this unknown. Yeah. What is the significance of Juneteenth? Most people don't know.
Yeah. The national dialogue is just beginning, and that's where I go back to us. We have the potential to be the healers in the community if we choose to. And I'm not being perfect. It's true. We have the potential by having dialogues and facilitating dialogues to really be some change agents.
Good work. Yes, good. I'll be looking forward to your findings. That'll be great. It's a good teaching tool. Great teaching tool for the new generation for multicultural issues. Yes.
Thank you again, Dr. Sasson. I'll be following up with you to learn more about those sweat lodges and Dr. Kundu. It's very beneficial. Conversations, I would say on a personal level, I appreciate your emphasis on having the dialogue, because that's certainly an approach you're taking in my hometown where I live in Benton in Central Arkansas, doing the same thing. And your presentation reminds me that if VR isn't in those conversations, that I need to be getting them there. So thank you again for participating. I know Dr. Cassandra Sly Conway and Reverend Cunningham have dropped off, but we appreciate their information. It's really been good today. Thank you. I think it's good information that we've needed, good reminders. Any final
Thank you all.
thing?
Robin, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome. So again, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Sure.
Bye. Robin, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Dr. Kandu.
Hey. Sure. John, enjoyed your presentation. It's good. Good
Thanks,
topic.
Doc.
Yep.
Coming from you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Assassin, how many people are you interviewing?
We've gotten 20 so far.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So what software are you using to analyze the theme?
Me? I'm doing the old long table method. I'm old fashioned. But we're triangulating it with the other professors. So and then we'll go back to the participants and make sure we captured their feelings and thoughts.
So,
but
you don't.
Sorry?
You're not using like a software to.
No. We chose to do that specifically so that we are embedded into the data ourselves. And then as we triangulate it, then we go back and talk to the participants. It really is a good follow-up to see where they are psychologically and how they're feeling since then.
Okay. I'm furthering along on my doctoral dissertation. So this summer or early fall, I'll be doing interviews and for a case study, youth with disabilities.
Yeah.
So hearing what you've done is similar to what I'm going to be doing. So I may have to follow back up with you for some more pointers.
I'll be glad to, Robin.
Well, using software probably less laborious. That's what I'm.
Yes.
Laborious. Using a software, so like Zoom, and then having someone told me a software that can record, that will document.
And then find the keywords.
Yeah.
Develop a team. Yeah. Atlas PI or something.
Okay.
And software. Okay. Another one I call, I don't know, name is funny.
You're right, I forgot the others. There's software out there that makes it a lot easier. It really does.
And it's supposed to work well with Zoom too, I hear.
True.
I'll leave that up to you younger people. Us old, speaking for myself, it's a brave new world for us.
Yes, it is. Gotta shift. Gotta shift.
John, you are in Tulsa campus, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So in the heart of the problem right there.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also been a great opportunity and a great level of, I've enjoyed the mentorship that I've had with all my students. It's really good.